If you would like a slight diversion before you get on to thing 2 in this lecture, let's see what you've learned in the first part about Chinese climate and topography and terrain and vegetation and cuisine and everything else by playing a quick round of what I call Where in China Are We? Ni hao, let's do this. Hello, little baby, where are we, mama? In China. Let's play real quick. Let's do this. So if I show you a picture of this, you will tell me are we in northern, southern, eastern, or western China, or the cardinal degrees in between, northwest versus northeast versus southeast versus southwest. Got it? Okay. If I show you this picture, where do you think this is? Well, got some Chinese architecture going on. We got some big old pine trees in the background and like 5 or 10 or 20 feet of snow. Well, you can start to pin it down that it's probably somewhere in the north, but northwest or northeast, with that much snow, it's probably northeast because the northwest is mostly desert. And indeed, we'd be from the Heilongjiang province up north in what we call kind of classic Manchuria. Way up north borders Russia and even north of North Korea. So cold area up there, 4 seasons and a big winter. What about this one? Well, that looks like full-on desert, does it not? It's actually, I think it's some oil rig, exploratory oil stuff going on. It looks like full-on desert, 0 vegetation, so it must be someplace dry, 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 all the way into the deep, deep, deep northwest of the Xinjiang province. That's the one I named in the last part of the lecture where a lot of Uyghur folks are, and perhaps there's been some protests and stuff. So Xinjiang, that huge autonomous region that's up there in northwestern province. Okay. How about this one? I love this picture. I actually have no real idea where this is at, but it's certainly an urban landscape, is it not? And by the way, this is a single frame of what was a 3 or 4 framed panoramic picture of people in China at a public swimming pool. So this is just one frame of 3. There are actually 2 or 3 other swimming pools of that size. Can you imagine a day in the summer going and hanging out in that mess? Well, I don't know perhaps exactly where it's at, but you can use some clues to detect, yes, we must be in the east given the population. Given the urban area behind the scene, just the population itself, we'll put it just around actually the capital of China, Beijing, in the Hebei province. The Hebei province, the capital of Beijing is much like Washington, D.C. It's its own kind of autonomous region within China. And the Hebei province is the state that surrounds the capital, by the way. Okay, how about this one? Any clues here in this picture that would give you a sense of where you might be at? I would point out, I see some mountains in the back, but they're pretty low mountains. Again, looks like the Blue Ridge Mountains of the Appalachians. More important is there's a lot of water. Wow. And in fact, those water, all those little pools, they ain't swimming pools, those are rice paddies. This is terraced rice fields. And in an area like this that is so lush and green with all of that water, you must be, and you're growing rice, you must be down south, and it's in the Guangdong province. This is the province where Hong Kong, Macau, and Guangzhou, major, big, important cities are all located way down south. It's a big trading port. Guangzhou is actually, all 3 of them are major trading ports. And that picture will also help tip you off that, wow, that looks like a bunch of tractor trailers down there. This is a port facility outside of town. Yeah, we're down in the Guangdong province where a lot of trade happens and a lot of rice production. Okay, let's move on to, okay, this is just a picture of some people. What's going on here? I see some mountains in the background. It looks kind of arid, and there's people riding horses. Well, I don't think this is Eastern China. And, you know, do those folks even look Chinese to you? If you're from China, you know that no, those aren't ethnically Han Chinese people. And in fact, they're Mongolian people. Mongolian people long known as horse fans and horse riders all the way back to Genghis Khan and before that. And so indeed, given all those factors together, this is from Inner Mongolia. Inner Mongolia, again, is what we call an autonomous region of China, much like a state. There are a bunch of states of China, just like there are states in the United States, like, say, California or Virginia. But there are also several what we call autonomous regions. Tibet is an autonomous region. Xinjiang is an autonomous region. Inner Mongolia, an autonomous region. Those autonomous regions are places that have a big ethnic minority that's not Han Chinese. In this case, of course, it's Mongolian people. And so when they divided up the political structure of China back after 1949, they gave these autonomous regions supposedly a bit more autonomy, a bit more self-rule because they are not ethnically Chinese people there. Does that make sense? We'll come back to that in a later lecture as well. How about this picture? Where might this be at? Again, I'm seeing some low hills in the background. I see some verdant green on those hills and some forest, so it's not in an arid region, but it's not in the Tibetan Plateau. Those mountains aren't that high. More importantly is that this is a big urban area and one where they're building some skyscrapers here in the foreground. So I don't know exactly where it's at, but I'm going to put it in the east where most people are. And this is in a hilly east, which is down in the southeastern quadrant of China, and indeed it's in Hunan province. Hunan, again, its own cuisine style as well. How about this one? If anybody's been to this place, you recognize it immediately. And even if you haven't been to this place, you should probably recognize that, well, it's somewhere near the coast. Roger that. I see water and a lot of boats. More importantly, does that look like Chinese architecture to you? It doesn't to me. That looks like European architecture to me. So what European-built city would be in today's China? Well, you might have guessed Hong Kong. Hong Kong don't look like this. This is Shanghai. Shanghai ruled by the British for 100 or 200 years when they rebuilt that historic waterfront in Western European architectural fashion. So Shanghai, there on the coast, still a historic remnant in its architecture and the way the city is outlined and the way it looks. How about this place? You don't have to know much about China to know, hey, that's the Great Wall of China. Yeah, roger that. Double points for you for pointing out the obvious. Where is the Great Wall at in China? I don't expect you to know exactly the exact state of China it's in, but it's somewhere up north. The Great Wall of China was built to defend China proper from the Mongol horde up north, so and any other invaders, some from Manchuria, by the way. So the Great Wall of China built somewhere up north, and given the terrain of this place, this isn't definitely coastal. It's somewhere in the interior of China, northern China, and indeed it's in the Shanxi province, which is west of the capital of Beijing. That's mostly today's Inner Mongolia. The southern border of Inner Mongolia is roughly where the Great Wall of China was built. Not all the way across the entire state, but good portions of it, and you can still visit the Great Wall of China in various states of China, mostly along that southern Inner Mongolian border. Again, because they built it to keep out the Mongols. How about this picture? I actually have no real clue where this is. We can start to narrow it down simply because it's a ginormous urban agglomeration. I can't even see anything but buildings to the horizon of this picture. I would say it's definitely in the east. And given that it's so uniform, do you ever detect that? I call this kind of communist architecture. Communism focused on function over form. In communism, it wasn't important that you stand out as unique, that you built something that was unique, that's very you, that expressed you, your character, whether you're designing clothes or cars or buildings. You design things so they're functional. You're not supposed to stand out. You're supposed to all be the same. And this was what I call kind of very utilitarian communist architecture, because all these buildings are just identical. It's just a sea of conformity. So where it's at exactly, I don't know, but it's definitely in the east because that's where all the Chinese people are. Let's go on to one that's perhaps a bit easier. And where would this scene be in China? Well, probably not too hard to figure this one out either. They may or may not be Chinese people. They may be Mongolian folks. But that is definitely one arid-ass place. That's full-on desert. They're even riding camels. So if it's not in Inner Mongolia, it must be in some place close to it between Xinjiang and Inner Mongolia, and that would be the state of Guangzhou. So big stretches of the Gobi Desert are in Inner Mongolia, but also Gansu and Xinjiang. And then you have the Taklamakan Basin over in Xinjiang province too, a huge, dry, interior low basin on the far western fringe of the country. But this is from Gansu. Let's move on to this picture. Wow, this is kind of the opposite of that last picture. Man, that's kind of crazy. From a very, very, very arid area to a very, very lush, tropical, verdant, green, wet area. And as pointed out in one of the other photographs, this is definitely some rice paddy action going on. In fact, almost every square inch of the entire landscape has been utilized for rice production in this paddy system. So it must be a place that's tropical, that's extremely wet. And in fact, down south, there are some full-on almost tropical rainforest conditions because they get so much rain so much of the year. Wow, here's another picture. Look at that. That's all terraced. How many humans took how many centuries to define this physical landscape? It always amazes me. Both of these pictures were taken from the Yunnan province, way down south, and you see Yunnan borders Thailand and Burma and Laos and Vietnam, and this is again tropical. Some parts of it might even be fully tropical rainforest area, but areas that certainly get a tremendous amount of rainfall. Down here, they crop rice 2 or 3 or 4 times a year because the temperatures are tropical year-round and the rainfall is consistent year-round. You can grow a lot of rice under those conditions. And just one other little tip, another shot from the Yunnan province, a guy riding a water buffalo, that this may come up a time or two in the rest of the lecture, but rice is often referred to historically as the dragon's backbone. What does that mean? Well, the dragon is China. Maybe I didn't make that clear yet in this lecture. Anytime you hear a reference to the dragon, that's kind of like their team mascot. Well, they got those bears, too. What are those panda bears that are black and white? That's kind of a mascot of China, too. But the dragon is a much more threatening, big, powerful mascot that China has forever been known as the dragon. And the dragon's backbone is rice and rice production. This is what supports the population of China for 5,000 to 10,000 years, is this one crop, which has made all the difference between why there are 1.5 billion people in China in today's world and why there are not 1.5 billion people in, say, Tibet in today's world. It has a lot to do with food production, and rice, especially in southern parts of China, which can be grown year-round, can produce tremendous food surpluses, which will then, of course, support a growing population for thousands and thousands of years. And that's exactly why China has so many people in it right now. Okay, let's get to another landscape, though. Boom! From wet back to dry. This is certainly the Great Wall of China again. We're certainly back in arid areas again, so we'll cut to the chase. We're back in Inner Mongolia once again with that. Oh, and you can see the camel trackers going down there in the foreground. That's an awesome pic. How about here? This is a new one. We haven't been to this part of the country yet. What clues can you detect? Well, if you are a really good architecture student, you might detect from the building structures that, yeah, they're Asian in origin and probably Chinese, but they look slightly different. More importantly, is I want to point out that those aren't clouds in the background. That's a snow-capped mountain. Where would you have snow-capped mountains that are snow-capped year-round because they're in excess of 20, 25, 28, 29,000 feet? Yes, that's right. The Himalayan range down in Tibet. And that's where we are, the Tibetan Autonomous Region in this picture. How about this one? I think this might be the same. This is also a shot from the Tibetan Autonomous Region of a guy riding what looks to be a very tired pony. So this is more in the Tibetan Plateau. There are some areas. I don't want to suggest that the entire Tibetan Plateau is Mount Everest, is high peaks. No, there are flatter areas too, but even these areas, again, are in excess of 12,000 feet average elevation above sea level. That's awful high, and it's awful arid, and it doesn't produce a lot of food. Just a few other pics to round out our tour of China. Here's a shot of the Great Wall of China that if you've been to China, you have very likely gone to see this, or if you ever go to China, this is the area that you'll go see the Great Wall, even though it runs for thousands of miles. Mostly tourists go to the Great Wall just outside of Beijing. And the Great Wall back in the day did go all the way to the coast, just north of it's now Beijing. You can also go see the Yellow Mountains in the Anhui province there in central China. And this place is absolutely fantastic. It looks like something out of a fairy tale. I believe it's a respite, a retreat, as it were. It's a very holy place. Lots of tourists go to the Yellow Mountains and go hiking and stuff because it's so awesome. It's been the basis for millions or perhaps billions of pieces of art and watercolors, and the Yellow Mountains are just fantastic. I believe it's actually karst topography for you geography majors or geology majors. If you know what karst is, I'm pretty sure the Yellow Mountains, parts of the area are karst topography as well. This is what Hong Kong looks like. A lot of folks are confused. They think Hong Kong's a city like New York City. Yeah, it is a city like New York City in that it has a lot of high buildings, and there's millions and millions of people there. But unlike New York City, which is concentrated in the center, Manhattan Island is where it's concentrated. That's where all the big buildings are. Hong Kong is actually a series of urban areas around water. So it's a bunch of islands that the coastal fringes of are the focus for massive urban building. So everything goes vertical in Hong Kong. So you will take ferries from one side of the island to another island to another island or to a different part of the coastline. All of it's focused around it. All of it is Hong Kong. Isn't that awesome? It's sweet. The busiest port on planet Earth, by the way, in terms of shipping containers going into and out of a singular place on planet Earth. Hong Kong is now #1 on planet Earth, a title it's held for some time. And speaking of big cities that are super important in today's world, here's a look at Shanghai. I showed you the historic waterfront in one picture. This is the non-historic city center now. A absolute infusion of neon and glitz and glamour and big buildings and fantastic modern architecture. Shanghai is a happening place. You see the city kind of flowing right through it there. It is a great place. The other place that you may have not heard of as frequently as Hong Kong or Shanghai is Guangzhou. I mentioned Guangzhou earlier, way down in the south in Guangdong province. So Guangdong province or Guangdong state is where the city of Guangzhou is. It's another huge and growing urban area that has held millions and millions of Chinese people for a very long time. It's always been a significant trading port, even back in the day. It was more important than Shanghai or Hong Kong way back in the day. Say 1,000 years ago, everything out of China went through Guangzhou. So major, huge, important trade city for most of Chinese history. And it's another urban agglomeration that holds 10, 20, 30 million people. It's hard to tell anymore. There's so many millions of people packed into eastern China. It's hard to tell where the cities stop and the next city starts. It's just one big urban sprawl from the north to the south across the entire eastern Chinese seaboard. And of course, Beijing is the current capital. It has not been the capital for all of Chinese history, by the way. It's a much more modern capital that has many different sides and faces to it. There are classic interior historic areas like the Forbidden Palace, but most of it's been remade as a very modern city with hints of European-style architecture, much more modern American architecture infused in there. And one of the other things that is a very big deal in today's world is that, yes, Beijing is a super important city, and it is a urban agglomeration of 20, 30, 35 million folks. And you have the negatives that go along with that, and that is pollution, particularly air pollution. You'll often hear stories and see them in the news, and this has come up very recently here, even in 2016, early 2016, in that smog besets the city, and you can virtually not even see 10 feet in front of your face. And a lot of folks, even during the Olympics back in 2008, were saying, hey, this is an unfair advantage. Their air is so bad, we can't even breathe here. It is one of the great balancing acts that China has to deal with here in the 21st century of everybody wants growth, everybody wants modern cities, everybody wants jobs, everyone wants their economy to grow, everybody wants to get richer. Who doesn't want that? But you also can't grow so fast and have so many people packed into urban areas and have so much industry and so much jobs and so much economy that you pollute yourselves to death. So that's one of the major issues that is confronting Beijing right this second and confronting them right there in their face in their capital city. Got it? Okay. Hope you enjoyed this little game and this little tour around China proper. But let's get back to our things you should know about China and East Asia as a whole.